Can I save Almeria from relegation? If you've been following my page for a while, you've seen I've previously done this with Burnley. But in this episode, we're doing an even harder challenge. We're saving Almeria. So at the time of recording, Almeria currently sit 20th in La Liga. They've drawn 6 games, losing 14 without a single win. They're currently 10 points from safety. They currently sit first in the top 25 worst teams for form in Europe, having picked up only 3 points in the last 10 games. So the first thing I had to do was make myself manager. The first thing I noticed was that Sergio Arribas was our highest value player, worth up to 37 million. However, we had only just signed him for 6 million, so he wasn't going anywhere. We then had a player called Ramazzini, who was worth quite a lot of money. He was a potential one that could have moved on. But I was also looking at what we can do to build a team. So Luis Suarez, who he only scored 4 goals on loan in for Almeria the season before, but he was definitely someone we could use. And we had Montos, who was a good central defender, a couple of good central defenders. So it looks like we definitely had a good spine of the team. So what I then had to do was build a tactic. So obviously, given the players that we've currently got, I thought that we'd be most suited to doing a 4-3-3, as we had some good midfielders as well that we could use. So I then started to build a team to see what I was working with. So Suarez, definitely a good enough striker, on a pressing forward obviously. If we don't bring another striker in, we'd be happy to use him. And probably our strongest position was at wingers, so we had Ramazzini, who could play as a winger, obviously on attack. And then Arribas out on the other wing, again another attacking winger. We then had to have a look at what we had in midfield. So I always like to play with a ball-winning midfielder, so I put a ball-winning midfielder and an attacking Mazzala alongside him. And then you have a deep-lying playmaker in the bottom of the central defence who can control play. So we had Malario, we had Bada. Now these are all in 3-star potential players, so I think midfield's definitely somewhere we need to look at improving. And our best deep-lying playmaker is only 2.5 star as well, so we're gonna edit the formation to suit him maybe. And then in terms of wing back, we had Hakimi, who could play there, and on the other side we had a bloke called Pozo, who can also play as a winger. And then where we're pretty strong is central defence. We've got Montos, we've got Kumi, and we've also got Kaki, who can play there. And then it looks like Almeida's already brought a goalkeeper in, so we're pretty much set for goalkeepers. So that left a few players over that we could potentially look to sell to bring some money in. None of them worth massive amounts, maybe Kaki, but we'll see. And as you can see, we had literally no money to spend, so I moved it all into wage budget. And yeah, it looks like we were going loan shopping and free signing shopping. And I did manage to get rid of a few players. So we sold Baptistio, and we got 2.3 million for him. He was never going to play for us. Probably one of the poorest wingers we had. We sold Mbaba. We also managed to get 1.6 million for him, so that brought a little bit of money into the club. And the big one we got rid of was Roberto, who we sold for 4.8 million. So the first thing we tried to do was trying to sign Brahim Diaz from Real Madrid on loan, but his wages were going to cost too much, nearly all the budget, so we decided to go against him. But then looking at other players we could sign, Emil Smith-Rowe looked a good option. Optional future fee of 102 million, which was obviously never going to pay, but Arsenal don't need to know that. They did, however, want money up front for a fee, but we decided we could stretch to that. And then another one I saw, which I'd like to bring in, was Yusuf Mukuku on loan. Same again, ginormous future fee, but we can't afford his wages, so we submitted offers for them. And we did get Mukuku in, so he was going to be our rotation striker, maybe even starting striker with Luis Suarez. And he looks pretty good from Dortmund. Looks like he'll be a good player for us. Played 26 times for Dortmund last season. Joe Wirrell did reject us, which was a shame. We then had to bring in some midfielders. As you saw, we didn't have much in terms of rotation. So we brought in Manu Monales, and that did upset some players, so it looks like we may have some more leaving. We then brought in Maatsen from Chelsea to shore up the defence. So he was a good option for a left back. He can also play midfield as well. And we set the bonuses to high, as the aim of this save is to try and keep Almeria in the La Liga. And then right before our first game, this was our best looking team. So we had Moukoko up top. Decided to play Moukoko up top as a pressing forward. And then we did replace Edgar with the new signing Monales just to shore up that defence a little bit. And then decided that Moukoko should be an attacking forward. We then put in Maatsen, who was going to be our new left back. But I did then have to check what we'd agreed to play these players in, as we didn't want them getting recalled a few games in. And I had promised to play Maatsen as a complete fullback, so that's what we did. We can't risk losing these. I then tried to bring in Enciso, but we were a little bit short of money. I did have some money in the transfer budget, but it wouldn't let me move it across. So it looks like we were going to have to sell maybe another player. And the only player I could see that we could really spare was Fernando. He wasn't going to be our starting goalkeeper. 33 years old. And luckily we did get an offer from him for Real Haspillas. And then that got confirmed for £3 million. Did upset Ramzani, so we had to talk him round, but it wasn't too bad. And that then meant that we did have the money to bring in Enciso. So we asked for confirmation on that. Got that all approved, and we had another new winger in the club just to help rotate, as we had to sell a few of the others to raise some funds. And I definitely think the team is looking a lot stronger than it did when we first took over at the club. However, I did then notice that we had too many foreign players at the club, which did cause a bit of an issue, so we had to look if we could spare any of these players. And the only one I could see that we could potentially let go was going to be Lazaro, who was a Brazilian. So we unregistered him, and luckily he was upset, so we tried to get rid of him. That all meant that Enciso then came into the team, and we was looking pretty strong. Then in our first game we played Vallecano, and we took an early lead through a Malario penalty. However, not long after, Vallecano pulled it back to 1-1 before shortly taking the lead in the 62nd minute through a well-worked goal, a little bit sloppy in defence to make it 2-1. We then went 3-1 down not long after through a set piece, but we did manage to pull a goal back in the 94th minute through Suarez. But we did lose our first game 3-2. I was still trying to get rid of Lazaro after we had to unregister him because we had too many foreign players in the team. But the board wanted to reject the offer I'd had for him, which meant it was looking like he was going to have to stay and maybe upset the balance of the team. Until Leeds came in with a loan offer, which we accepted. In our next game we then played Barcelona, where we lost 3-1. Didn't play too bad, but things wasn't looking great. Lost our first 2 games from 2 starts. But Moukoko did become the youngest ever scorer for us. We was then trying to get some offers in from other teams, but we did manage to get rid of Lazario to Eibar in the end. In our next game we then played Cadiz, where we took a early lead in the 11th minute through Suarez again. He was looking like the better striker. We then made it 2-0 in the 14th minute through Suarez again, and Enciso with the assist. And we then made it 3-0 not long after in the 16th minute, and things were looking good for this game. Cadiz did pull a goal back in the second half to make it 3-1, but we had our first win of the season. And then in our next game against Valencia, things didn't go so well. We did take an early lead, and Enciso again with some great footwork into Suarez. We then made it 2-0 again through Suarez. Before Valencia started to come back at us with a well-worked goal, and a tap in for Franco made it 2-1. But then that didn't stop us. So we came back again. And we made it 3-1 through Ramazani. And after that win, we were up to 7th in the league with 2 wins and 2 losses. So we had a fairly decent start to the league, 2 wins and 2 losses. We didn't do any more business before the transfer window shut. So I carried on playing a few more games. And I got through to Christmas. So things weren't looking too good for saving Almeria. After 2 wins and 2 losses from our first 4 games, things didn't go too well for us after that. We ended up sat down in 17th in the league with only 5 wins and 3 draws, but 11 losses. Form wasn't looking too good. I mean, after that Valencia game, we did go on to beat Mallorca, we drew against Alvarez, and we beat Granada. But then we had a real poor run. We didn't get a win in our next 2 months. We're only picking up 1 point. We recently beat Vigo in the league, but we did have a 5-0 hammering by Atletico Pamplona. And all that meant we were joint on points with Girona at the bottom of the league. And in terms of the players that were doing well, I mean, Maximino was still our starting goalkeeper. Enciso had picked up 4 goals and 3 assists. And in terms of goals, we just wasn't really scoring enough. Makuka and Suarez both had 5 goals. Makuka had picked up 3 assists as well. But in terms of assists as well, Marolo was our highest assist maker. And as you can see, Suarez is the only player we had in green. But we decided to let a few players go and not renew their contracts, which meant we had a little bit of money to spend in January. We had 14,000 available wage budget with 1.8 million transfer. So the first thing I did was try to sign Jeremy Doku, but we also sold Romero, another fullback. We then lost our next game against Vallecano to keep the poor run going, and I was beginning to think we weren't going to be able to save this team. We let some more players go. We also tried to sign Nuno Mendes, but he wouldn't come in. But then the unthinkable happened, and we actually managed to pick up a win against Barcelona, beating them 3-2 at home. And maybe things were going to start to turn around. I needed to shore up the defence quickly, so I brought in Harry Suter from Leicester. Big money signing for us, 5.7 million. But things were getting desperate. So I sent him on his intensive language course, and then I tried to register him and completely missed that he was also a foreign player, which meant once again we had too many foreign players in the team. And looking through, I knew we couldn't get rid of NC, so he'd been too important for us this season. It was the 3 centre-backs that were causing the issue, so that meant that Kiki had to go. We then played Cadiz in a must-win game at the bottom of the table. They were currently sat in 20th. We knew we had to win, but unfortunately we did lose 1-0. But on the plus side, we did get an offer in for Kaki, which means at least he wasn't going to be upset, and he did join Lille. All that meant we had more money to bring someone in. I was still thinking we were short in midfield, so I managed to bring in Mangala for over £2 million from Forest, and he just gave us a bit more of a presence in that defensive mid-role. So all that meant we loaned 2 players out, and we brought 2 new players in, a new defender and a new midfielder, and hopefully that'll be enough to save our season. So after signing a couple of new players, I then played through to March in the hope that we could turn the form around and save this season. I wasn't really confident, but who knows. So I got through to March, and as you can see, we decided not to renew a lot of these contracts. So coming off the back of January after losing to Cadiz, we managed to win against Valencia again. With a draw with Mallorca, we beat Alvarez, and then we went on an unbeaten run in March, beating Villarreal, drawing with Bilbao, and beating Real Haspilas. And what was the cause of all this change? Well, it was Harry Suter and Mangala, who started off playing really well as they came into the team. As you can see, Mangala was a bit of a bench player, but he picked up 1 goal and 1 assist. And he was looking really good for us, had a 7.15 rating. And Harry Suter, he'd started 5 games and also picked up a goal. And I was beginning to feel like our fortunes were changing. And all this meant that we were sat in 13th, 10 points clear of the relegation zone in March, and things were starting to look good for saving Almeria. Things were looking good, so I went through to May, to the last few games of the season. I also didn't mean to, but I let a few more players go, and now the club's got a £125,000 a week wage budget to play with. But in terms of form, we did take a bit of a dip. We lost to Real Madrid, only picked up a point against Getafe, lost against Real San Sebastian and Atletico Madrid. However, we did beat Seville, and all that meant we were 14th in the league, with 4 games left to go. We just needed 8 points for safety. In our next game, we did lose 1-0 to Vigo, which meant this was going to be a close race to the end. Valencia picked up a point, and that meant we were only 7 points from safety. So all this meant we needed just 3 points to secure safety and save Almeria. It was time to rally the boys. So we had a team meeting where I eased expectations, and they all reacted very positively. And then with just a couple of games left to go, we'd finally done it. A 3-0 win against Athletic Paulo meant that we'd saved Almeria from relegation. And there's confirmation in the table that we sat on 42 points, 7 points clear of the drop zone. And just to put the icing on the cake, we also got a point against Las Palmas before finally beating Girona in the last game of the season. So all that meant we'd not only saved Almeria, but we'd also finished mid-table, 2 points behind the finish in the top half. In a weird twist of events, Cadiz must have won one of the cups and also qualified for European football despite getting relegated, not something you see too often. But then interestingly, the board give us some massive budgets to play with for the following season, with a £240,000 a week wage budget available and £7 million for transfers. It made me very tempted to carry on doing this save and see how far I could take this team. And then just to recap, in terms of which players were the best for us, so Suarez finished with a green rating after scoring 11 goals in only 14 starts. Suter came in and became the second best player, as did Mangala coming the third best player. Them two, I think, were a turning point for us in the season. Montos finished the top appearance maker. He's also wanted by a few teams, as is Pozzo, who made 36 appearances for us. And in terms of assist, Ian Matson, the player we brought in at the start of the season, he managed to get 8. Mukoku also picked up 7 goals and 7 assists. And I was wondering if we could sign him on a permanent, but with a £104 million optional future fee, it wasn't looking likely. However, Matson didn't have a future fee agreed, so maybe he could potentially have come in. But yeah, as you can see there, the loan signings really came good for us. So managed to save Almeria. Not only did we save Almeria, we also made a mid-table team and set them up really good for the future. If you'd be interested in seeing me carry on and see where we can take Almeria, I'd love to do another one of these videos carrying on in this save. But let me know down in the comments if that's something you would like to see. If there's any other teams you'd like to see me save, also let me know down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And see you next time. Thank you very much.